What you're about to hear started with a single question from Dan Goldman, just one. But within seconds that question turned into a clash so tense, so revealing, and so impossible to walk away from that the entire room fell silent. Goldman wasn't raising his voice. He didn't need to. His tone alone sliced straight through the hearing, and from the moment he locked eyes with Kristi Noem, you could feel the pressure shifting. It was the kind of moment where everyone watching knew something big was coming.
Goldman for 5 minutes.
Secretary Noem, let's talk about the law. Do you agree that asylum is a lawful pathway to immigrate to this country? Yes or no?
There's an asylum program, yes, in place.
All right. So immigrants then with ongoing asylum applications are legally in this country, correct?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Your question was?
Immigrants with ongoing asylum applications are legally in this country.
There are individuals in this country that have applications that...
And they are legally here because it's a lawful pathway, right?
It's a lawful pathway.
Okay, so if your department then deports anyone with an ongoing asylum application, you are violating the law, correct?
Joe Biden left us with...
I'm not asking about Joe Biden. I'm asking you a specific question. If your department deports anyone with an ongoing asylum application, you are violating the law. Is that correct?
It was greatly violated when they allowed
I'm asking you.
People to come
I'm
in
asking
and granted asylum applications.
Why are you filibustering? Why can't you answer the question? It's a simple question.
Your president,
if your department deports anyone with an ongoing asylum application, you are violating the law. Isn't that correct?
The asylum program was broken under the last...
Mr. Chairman, I will reclaim my time. She's not answering the question. But the obvious answer is that, yes, if you follow a lawful pathway, asylum is a lawful pathway, if you have an open asylum case, you are here lawfully. But the problem that we are seeing around the country is that you are not following the law. Don't tell us to change the law. If you don't like the asylum system, you change the asylum law. Bring it to us. We'll work with you. I think it needs to be changed. But you can't just decide that you're not going to follow the law, and asylum is a law, and deport people who have ongoing applications. Unfortunately, that is exactly what's happening. It's happening across the street from my office right in New York City. Numerous, thousands of people who have come to court appearances, have left them with open asylum applications, have been arrested. And then they've been shipped off and many deported. In September, one applicant was ripped away from his wife and small children after such a court appearance. And then this happened to his wife. Please play the video. No, it's not. It's not this one. All right, it's not this video. Here it is.
I'm yours. Oh, come on, man.
Now, after this incident, your department issued a statement that said the officer's conduct in this video is unacceptable and beneath the men and women of ICE. Our ICE law enforcement are held to the highest professional standards, and this officer is being relieved of current duties as we conduct a full investigation. 3 days later, you reinstated that officer and you put him back on duty. I sent you a letter and asked you what investigation was done and why was he reinstated. You did not answer that letter. So I'm going to give you an opportunity right here to explain to me that if that officer's conduct was, quote, beneath the men and women of ICE, unquote, why did you reinstate him?
Sir, that investigation was completed. I can give you that investigation and the information that you would like. This is
I wrote you 2 months ago. Why haven't you given it to me yet?
I'm actually surprised that you haven't gotten it. I'm going to ask my staff about that.
Well, you shouldn't be surprised because generally speaking, you do not respond to us.
Thousands of your letters.
Now, the other problem that we are seeing all over the country is that your officers are wearing masks, are dressed in plain clothes, often going around without identification.
All of our officers are identified.
I'm not asking a question. I introduced the No Secret Police Act to stop this. And we now have 113 co-sponsors so that they will not be masked and that they will identify themselves. Now, you say all of them are identifying themselves. That is not the case because last month, in New York City again, the NYPD officers were injured by your masked plainclothes ICE officers after they were called from 911 as residents witnessed your officers pulling individuals out of their vehicles and chasing them down the street. I also asked you what happened there. How were the NYPD officers injured by your officers? And you didn't respond. What's the answer?
Sir, our individual
Gentleman's
officers
time
are
is
identified.
time has expired.
I yield
I
back.
recognize gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gonzalez, 5 minutes.
Because when Goldman confronts someone who tries to dodge the law, he doesn't back down. And when Noem tried to sidestep even the simplest point, the confrontation ignited in a way no one expected. What followed was a rapid-fire exchange, a dismantling of talking points, and a spotlight on decisions that raised far more questions than answers. And as the minutes unfolded, the real story wasn't just in what she said, it was in everything she refused to say. Goldman opened the exchange with something almost too basic to be controversial. Do you agree that asylum is a lawful pathway into this country? Yes or no? The simplicity of that question should have made it easy to answer. But Noem paused, recalculated, and then gave an answer that sounded more like a halfway step than clarity. There's an asylum program, she said carefully. Yes, Goldman didn't let that slide. He tightened the frame immediately. If asylum is a lawful pathway, then immigrants with active asylum applications are legally in the United States. Again, yes or no? And suddenly Noem's confidence began to slip. She repeated fragments of the question, reformulated it, hedged around the edges. Goldman leaned forward. It's a lawful pathway, right? She finally admitted that yes, asylum exists and yes, people with pending cases are legally here. But even then her phrasing felt shaky, like someone choosing every word with tweezers. Goldman sensed it. And that's when he sprung the trap that had been waiting since his very first question. Because once she acknowledged that asylum claims protect people from removal, the next step was unavoidable. If her department was deporting individuals who still had pending asylum cases, then it wasn't just bending policy. It was breaking the law. Full stop. Goldman laid it out plainly. So if your department deports anyone with an ongoing asylum application, you are violating the law, correct? That's when the mood in the room changed. Noem didn't answer. She pivoted to talking about the previous administration. Goldman cut her off. I'm not asking about them, I'm asking you a specific question. His tone sharpened as she drifted again, avoiding the point entirely. Why are you filibustering? He asked. And it was clear to everyone watching this was not confusion, this was refusal. And if she answered directly, she'd have to acknowledge a legal contradiction she couldn't afford to admit on record. But that wasn't even the part that stunned the committee. The shock came next when Goldman explained exactly what was happening back home. Across New York City, he said, people with open asylum cases, legally present individuals following the rules, were being arrested after routine court appearances, separated from their families, and transported out of the state. Thousands of them. Men, women, young parents whose only crime was showing up for the official appointments they were supposed to attend. And one case in particular sent a chill through the room. A man who had just walked out of court doing everything exactly as required was suddenly grabbed, detained, and removed from his wife and small children. Goldman paused, letting the weight of that hang. Then he gestured toward the screen. And this is what happened to his wife. The room went still. The video flickered to life, and even without graphic violence, it told a story of fear, panic, and force, one that stuck with anyone watching. But even that wasn't the part that raised the most questions. Because after the incident, Noem's own department issued a statement condemning the ICE officer involved. They called his behavior unacceptable, saying it fell beneath the standards expected of their agents. Strong words, until you hear what happened just 3 days later. Despite their own condemnation, despite saying his conduct violated the expectations of the agency, Noem reinstated the very same officer. Not weeks later. Not after months of investigation. Just 3 days. Goldman had sent a letter demanding answers. What investigation was done? Who conducted it? Why was he reinstated so quickly? But according to him, Noem never replied. She never explained the sudden reversal. She never clarified what changed between the department's public condemnation and the private decision to restore the officer's authority. Now, inside the hearing, she insisted the investigation was completed. She even offered to provide the findings. Goldman's eyebrows lifted. "I wrote you 2 months ago," he said. "Why haven't you given it to me yet?" Noem seemed genuinely surprised. "I'm surprised you haven't gotten it," she said, promising vaguely to check with her staff. But the problem wasn't just this one letter. Goldman noted he'd sent hundreds, possibly thousands of requests over time, almost all unanswered. Patterns like this don't happen by accident, and the people in the room knew it. But Goldman wasn't finished. He moved to something even more alarming, a problem he said had been happening all across the country for years. ICE officers were operating in plain clothes, wearing masks, and failing to properly identify themselves, not during undercover operations, not while surveilling violent offenders, during arrests of civilians inside communities. "All of our officers are identified," Noem said quickly, sounding confident. But Goldman immediately countered with specific incidents, including one involving the NYPD. In New York City, officers responding to a 911 call encountered masked ICE agents pulling people from vehicles. The situation escalated so fast that NYPD officers were injured by Noem's officers, something that raised serious internal questions across departments. And Goldman had asked her again for details. What exactly happened? Why were NYPD officers hurt? How were mask-wearing, plain-clothed agents allowed to operate without clear identification? No answers, no explanation, no responsiveness at all. When he pressed her again during the hearing, she didn't give a single detail. And as her time ran out, the silence spoke louder than anything she could have said. The real problem wasn't any single incident, the deportations, the video, the masked arrests, or the unanswered letters. It was the pattern. A pattern of avoiding direct answers, a pattern of withholding information, a pattern of acting first and explaining later, if at all. Goldman's final point summed it up with painful clarity. Don't tell us to change the law if you're not following the law that already exists. And he was right. If the department believes the asylum system is broken, they can work with Congress to fix it. But what they cannot do is ignore it. They cannot bypass it. They cannot treat lawful presence as unlawful simply because enforcement preferences shift. And when the department refuses to answer basic questions about why those decisions were made, the transparency problem becomes impossible to overlook. As Goldman's questioning closed, the committee moved on, but the tension he created didn't disappear. Because if this is how openly the department dismisses oversight, what happens when no one is watching? What happens when the cameras are off and the families involved don't have someone like Goldman speaking for them? And that's the part that should concern everyone. Because no matter where you stand on immigration policy, one fact remains: the law is the law. If asylum is lawful, then asylum seekers with open cases are lawful. If officers violate protocol, there should be accountability, not rapid reinstatement and silence. If congressional oversight requests answers, they should get them, not months of ignored correspondence. And if enforcement tactics include masked unidentified officers injuring local police, the American public deserves an explanation. These aren't small issues, they're fundamental. They reach into transparency, rule of law, family integrity, constitutional protections, and trust in the agencies that operate within our streets and communities. Goldman didn't frame his questions as political attacks, he framed them as legal obligations, and that's why the exchange hit as hard as it did. Because when a simple yes or no becomes impossible to say, it usually means the real answer is the one no one wants to admit. But this confrontation isn't just about one hearing. It raises deeper questions about a system under growing strain. If lawful pathways are being overlooked, what other legal safeguards are slipping through the cracks? If internal investigations can reverse themselves in days, what standards are being applied behind closed doors? And if masked, plain-clothed officers can move through neighborhoods without transparency, what does that mean for public trust? Each piece of the hearing pointed to the same uncomfortable truth: there is more happening within these operations than the public is being told. And while rumors circulate online about rushed investigations, internal pressure, and inconsistent enforcement practices, none of that can be confirmed without accountability from the very department responsible. Goldman's questions weren't just sharp, they were necessary. He gave Noem every opportunity to clarify, to explain, to correct the record. She chose not to, and in a hearing where every second is recorded, every word preserved, that choice becomes part of the public record. It becomes part of the story. It becomes part of why people demand answers long after the session ends. Because if clarity is so hard to provide in the open, what hope is there for transparency in the shadows? And as America continues to debate immigration enforcement and reform, exchanges like this shape the national conversation far beyond the committee room. If you found this breakdown eye-opening and want to stay updated on the hearings, confrontations, and behind-the-scenes moments that reveal what's really going on, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button and turn on notifications. There's a lot more happening, and you won't want to miss what comes next.